Good day, this 286th day, meaningful moments, 365 days. Yesterday and over the week, it seems like there have been a couple of discussions with individuals close to, my life, and perhaps you have those individuals. The ones that are closest to us are the ones that we get to work out the most stuff with. So that's why it's always somewhat relevant, what's happening in those dialogues that we have in our conversations with one another. And it so happens that I was having a conversation with my husband, and he was talking about some things with his work, and I was talking about some of the things that I had encountered in my days too. And both of us were sharing different bits and pieces, and it's so easy to observe when you're on the other side of an observation, and then of course much harder to see it when you're in it. And we all know that we've all had those experiences. But what came up was this idea about the way we express ourselves, the freedom to express ourselves. And so many people talk about, how it's our right to have freedom of expression and all those things, and it's built into our Constitution. But it's so interesting that there's still these societal types of parameters on what that expression should or shouldn't be. And, it comes down to not just societal, but also cultural and then familial. There's all these different levels of what is permissible to express or should not be expressed. And sometimes they're not even stated. Sometimes they're just like quiet, everybody knows it, but nobody says it. And, we have our experience out of this type of way that we perceive and the parameters that we have about how to express and what's okay or not okay to express, all those kinds of things. And of course, we grow up with all these, and I say grow up because that doesn't stop like at 21. I'm talking about, continually we're growing and evolving. And so then we inadvertently perhaps have families, pass that down to our children, or, your own family of origin. If you have siblings, you can see like the evolution of all those things and the way the relationships change, and parental sibling relationships, all those different dynamics. But ultimately, even if we have that way to express ourselves, there's the other end that receives. And oftentimes people find different agitations or irritations with someone just freely expressing. And I encountered that myself today. It was so interesting seeing the opposite side of what my husband had been describing to me, and me saying, yeah, well, the other side of it is to take into account, like, you have a choice. It can be just a statement or not taking it personally. And of course, for many people on a path of consciousness, we know that like one of the tenays of that path, of this path, is to not take anything personally. That's like a fundamental, basic understanding that we cultivate. And yet today I felt a little bit about that and shared that back. And no sooner did I share that back that I realized, oh my gosh, I felt that little bit of irritation. And then when I shared it, right afterwards, I felt like, oops, I shouldn't have said that. And of course I said it just as a matter of fact that I knew I had felt something like that. But then I found myself with a feeling of like, I maybe shouldn't have said that, or maybe a little bit of that compounded feeling of guilt, like, I rocked the boat, there I go again, kind of thing. And all these types of ways that we shush ourselves, inhibit ourselves. So perhaps there's pieces of this that you can relate. And then I thought, like, the reality is to let all of it go freely. We know when we're coming from a place and we state something. We know also when we say something and it's, got an edge on it, or it's being mean. But, in cases where we're respectfully stating something about how we feel, we need to give ourselves permission to freely express and allow the other to have their way of processing, interpreting that, and everything else like that. And in the meantime, we can still continue to send out that love, not just for what we've stated freely in expression with nothing attached to it, no judgment, no attachments of any kind, and at the same time be loving to ourselves for having that courage just to speak freely and to be real with, how we have our interactions with one another and how we engage. And part of that engagement is also knowing not to engage as in confront, but just to be able to speak and see that we're all really doing our very best. We all really want to be able to have that freedom to be able to understand not just the other, but ourselves especially. And when we begin to see that in one another and how we're all moving in that same direction, there's a new way that we can connect with one another, a deeper way that we can connect with one another. Offering that up today in this moment of free expression. Aho, friends.